Oh shit. SO389 dispatch. I've located the body. The scene's about 50 yards on a trail.
Deep in the woods, police uncover a serial killer's secret torture ground.
What is that? Sounds like it's heading this way.
5 feet from the knife, up the top of the body, carving the blood of the place.
10-4, signal 7. Please send another unit to my location.
Why would a killer build this deep in the forest?
Whoever did this, that's fresh.
There's a little eyeball right here. There's some creepy shit right here.
Smell this right? You don't smell gas right here?
Yeah.
So they're gonna torch him?
I'm not sure what it is, but I've got movement east of my location in the woods. There's something moving around back this way.
He carries 3 or 4 knives on him. He thinks he's Rambo.
You're what? I'm just like a god.
As police launched a search for Dusty, other officers stayed behind to speak further with the 2 911 callers, hoping to piece together a clearer timeline. According to them, the day had started with a strange tension in the air, unsettling signs that something wasn't right. Arguments had broken out early. Dusty had been pacing the campsite, muttering to himself. There was talk of missing supplies, strange looks, paranoia, and then he disappeared into the woods, only to return later, silent and cold. They didn't know it at the time, but that morning would mark the beginning of something far more sinister than any of them could imagine.
Okay. We both went down there. We live right here.
Okay.
We wanted to go check on our friend. He's wrapped up in a tarp.
Okay. Sir,
We came back
I
and called.
heard arguing earlier, right?
We know who was down there, first.
Arguing.
Okay.
So I walked down through the woods. I seen Dusty have James on the ground. He was saying, you shouldn't talk shit about this and that. You know what I'm saying? I heard, like, oh, they just getting shit out, you know what I mean? But I never hear nothing from over there no more. I'm like,
You know Dusty's real name or?
Dusty McDonald.
Did you say that James called them today and said, hey,
Nope, Rick.
oh, Rick called.
Rick.
And said,
James was there.
when
Both
Dusty
of
went
us
over there
there.
and cut his tent with
Cut
a
him up,
machete?
threatened with a machete,
Yep.
cut his tent up,
Yep.
all kind of shit.
He called the police. I was there
Yep,
for that. I
called
was
the
there for
police,
that.
made a report, and the police just said, stay away from him. There's a tarp laying beside a tree that's never there, because I live here, and I took this stick and went. When I flipped it up, I seen legs.
Thanks to the witness statements, officers now had a fairly detailed picture of what had likely unfolded just hours earlier. More importantly, they had a lead suspect, Dusty McDonald. And as it turned out, the name wasn't new to everyone. One of the officers recognized it from a previous incident, a different case, a different town, but the same name and the same violence. This wasn't Dusty's first time on their radar. And now, the urgency to find him had just doubled.
I think they already brought up his name, but Dustin McCormick.
Yeah, Dusty.
Dusty,
Yeah,
supposedly general in some militia, come down there this morning with a machete and started hacking up some of the tents because he wanted to clear the area. Said he's signal 20 and off his meds.
They said Dusty. They said Dusty's the one that's outstanding.
Yeah, they said this guy Dusty left from over here by later in the evening.
By now, it was clear Dusty McDonald was more than just a person of interest. With statements from Jamie and Robert in hand, police began to reconstruct the final hours leading up to the brutal killing. Earlier that day, another camper named Rick had called 911. According to him, Dusty had slashed open his tent with a machete while frantically searching for a man named James, even threatening Rick in the process. Later that afternoon, witnesses reported hearing shouting from the camp. When they went to check, they saw Dusty on top of James wrestling, yelling. It looked like a heated argument, nothing more. So they walked away. But the hours passed, and James never returned. Worried, Robert and Jamie went looking for him. That's when they found the blue tarp, and beneath it James's lifeless body. Nearly every witness account supported this timeline. The pattern was undeniable. The motive emerging. The next move was clear. Locate Dusty, arrest him, and find out what really happened in those woods. Fortunately, Officers had already begun the process of locating Dusty earlier that day. They had an address, a rundown house on the outskirts of town, tucked behind overgrown hedges and weather-worn fencing. With probable cause and statements in hand, the decision was made. Squad cars lined the street. Flashlights cut through the dimming light. Guns drawn. Officers surrounded the property, every angle covered. There was no running now. Dusty McDonald was about to face the consequences of what he left in the forest. From the moment Dusty entered the interrogation room, his behavior was erratic, borderline unhinged. He leaned forward, eyes wide, and blurted out, "James tried to set me on fire. You already know what happened down there." It was sudden, defensive, strange. Whether he was building a self-defense narrative or spiraling into delusion, no one could say for sure. But one thing was clear. Dusty wasn't going to make this easy.
Sorry to walk this way, man. Yeah, dude, sorry, you know what happened down there. That's what we're trying to figure out. Dude, man tried to light me on fire as I came.
Okay, just listen.
Okay.
We've got one side. Right? That's why you need to come with us. Okay? I know you are.
With the suspected killer now in custody, officers wrapped up their grim investigation at the scene. What they had found there wasn't just evidence of murder, it was evidence of something far darker. If Dusty was the killer, the brutal condition of James's body suggested a mind unhinged, a person capable of violence that went far beyond rage. And soon, that suspicion would be confirmed. The interrogation was about to reveal just how disturbed Dusty McDonald truly was. By this point, Dusty had already raised serious red flags. He'd slashed Rick's tent with a machete, threatened him, and multiple witnesses had placed him in a heated argument with James just hours before the murder. It all pointed in one direction, but then a complication. Dusty wasn't denying the confrontation. He was claiming self-defense. According to him, James had poured gasoline on him and threatened to set him on fire. Was it a desperate lie from a cornered man? Or was there more to the story than anyone expected? Officers knew. They had to dig deeper fast. This wasn't a claim detectives could ignore. The distinct smell of gasoline at the scene gave Dusty's story just enough weight to raise doubt. A dangerous crack in what seemed like a clear-cut case. It was now possible, however unsettling, that he might walk free, even though every finger pointed to Dusty as the killer. His self-defense claim had introduced a sliver of credibility. Detectives had one job: tear it apart, either by dismantling his story with airtight witness accounts, or, even better, by getting a confession straight from his mouth. But one thing was certain: the investigation had just gotten a lot more complicated. To move forward, detectives shifted their focus, not just to Dusty, but to the people who knew him best. They began bringing in individuals from the encampment, people who had lived beside Dusty, interacted with him daily, and may have witnessed his darkest moments. If there was a pattern of violence, of paranoia, or aggression, these were the people who would have seen it firsthand. And what they revealed would not only support the case against Dusty, it would expose a disturbing pattern that stretched far beyond that single day in the woods.
My goal here is to kind of get, from your perspective, kind of what you saw, what you heard.
He ain't really been fucking with me at all. I ain't never had no cross words. He's always insistent, "Oh, come up there and do your laundry and all that shit, you know. Come up there and get a shower." That's what it was. Come and get a shower. Come get a shower all the time. So I fucked up and got a shower and get him $2 afterward, you know, just a gesture.
Rick tells detectives that Dusty often offered showers and laundry access to other homeless individuals in the area, sometimes for free, other times for a small fee. At first, it seemed generous, but to detectives, it triggered a deeper suspicion. This wasn't kindness, it was control, a subtle way for Dusty to position himself as a figure of power within the encampment, offering basic needs in exchange for dependence, obedience, and silence. What seemed like a small detail now pointed to a larger pattern, a manipulative dynamic that gave Dusty leverage over those around him, and that leverage may have turned deadly.
I tried my best to get along with him. You know, he had a shower that we all used, you know, sometimes try to keep him good with him for those reasons and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I get that.
Never my wildest dreams that I think he was capable of murder, and that's the honest truth. I was just over there basically using his necessities like we all were. We got a chance to, shower, usually offered it. That's his way of making friends with us, I think. I had stayed with him before, and he kicked me out. I thought I was in a light, so I was taking pictures of him and stuff like that with my phone. I didn't even have a phone. Like, I saw you taking pictures of me with your phone. I said, Dusty, I don't even have a phone. He said, you gotta go. So I left. That's that.
Dusty lived in a small house just outside the homeless encampments, a property owned by his grandfather. At first glance, he came off as a generous neighbor, someone willing to lend a hand to those with nowhere else to turn. Much like Rick Busby described, Dusty would let members of the camp use his home, offering them showers, laundry access, even a warm place to sit. But the more detectives looked, the clearer it became. This generosity came with strings attached. What seemed like kindness may have been a carefully crafted facade, a way for Dusty to lure vulnerable people into his orbit and keep them there under the illusion of help. And in James's case, that illusion may have turned fatal. As investigators continued interviewing members of the homeless community, a darker image of Dusty began to emerge. He wasn't just unstable, was paranoid, volatile, and delusional, with a history of sudden outbursts and strange behavior that many had simply learned to avoid. But despite these red flags, detectives faced a frustrating challenge. The interviews, while unsettling, were too vague. They painted a pattern, yes, but lacked the specific, actionable details needed to lock in the case. So, they circled back to the one person who had been clear from the beginning. Jamie, the original 911 caller. Of everyone involved, Jamie held the sharpest memory of what happened that day. And now, he was ready to offer something far more valuable. A glimpse into who Dusty really was behind the mask.
Mr. Allen, my role here in all this, it's just kind of to get from your perspective, your side of things, what you saw, what you observed.
Man came to my camp last night. I used to stay up there with him. He's a violent person.
Okay.
His papa always wanted to let me stay there because he's the one that owns the property. The reason I don't stay there is because you don't do what he says, and he gets all angry and threatens you, and he just crazy shit. I said, well,
What does he usually carry?
he ain't got a stick this time. But he's either got a stick, a machete, or a knife. He carries like 3 or 4 knives on him. Machete, sticks, he's like, he thinks he's Rambo.
Dusty had long carried a reputation as a bully, someone who routinely harassed and intimidated members of the homeless community. But no one imagined his behavior would escalate to cold-blooded murder. His so-called generosity, offering showers, laundry, and a temporary escape, wasn't an act of kindness. It was a mask, a cover for a deeper, more disturbing need: control. The very people he claimed to help were the same ones he threatened, manipulated, and dominated, trapped in a cycle of dependence and fear. Beneath it all was a warped sense of power, a superiority complex fed by their vulnerability. In the end, it was the toxic contradiction meant savior and predator. That may have laid the foundation for the gruesome murder of James Leighton Decker. When Dusty was finally brought in for questioning, his demeanor was eerily calm, almost detached from the gravity of what had happened. He spoke slowly, with a strange confidence, as if convinced that he was the victim, a man attacked by a violent drifter, forced to defend himself. But it didn't add up. Detectives were prepared to hear his side of the story. What they got instead was nonsense, rambling accusations, cryptic claims, and erratic logic that spiraled in every direction. But the truth, it was clear Dusty wasn't in his right mind. Whether it was a calculated performance or a window into a disturbed psyche, one thing was certain: he wasn't going to give them the answers easily.
You know I'm an owl, right?
You're what?
You know I'm an owl, right?
Okay.
You know what that means, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Golly.
Thank you. This
Oh,
has been a really hard day. Sir, I waived all rights a long time ago.
You know, I still have a great sense of innocence within me. If it ain't obvious to you this time.
Throughout the interrogation, Dusty's responses grew more disjointed, a chaotic mix of delusions, deflections, and paranoia. In Dusty's mind, he wasn't just misunderstood. He was targeted. "I'm an owl," he muttered at one point. "Always watched, monitored. They know everything I do." Detectives exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't just evasiveness, it was a descent into something deeper. It became increasingly clear. Dusty was unmedicated, and his schizophrenia was spiraling out of control. The man sitting before them wasn't fully grounded in reality, and yet somewhere beneath the delusion was the truth of what happened in that farce. The challenge now was pulling it out before it disappeared entirely.
I'm handling remarkably well. If you, man, that was some crazy shit, man. And to still be able to get us some usable intel, you know, you'll get why staying at that place is so dangerous for me. I know a lot of trust is getting to me or like that, but man, thank you for saying you'll be able to talk about this.
Dusty sat across from the detectives with a strange sense of confidence. In his mind, he wasn't the suspect. He was the informant, a misunderstood man with valuable intel, helping authorities understand some twisted version of events where he was the victim. But what Dusty didn't realize was that the walls were already closing in.
I haven't shed a tear all day, you know, I've been going hard, you know. I'm so exhausted.
How long have you been doing it?
What, this kind of work? Not very long. That was my first. I think everybody knows that. From the get-go. You know, thank you for this deep psychological diagnosis for it. It's helping a lot. Good.
As detectives listened closely to Dusty's rambling words, a chilling realization began to set in. He was admitting to the murder. Not directly, not in a way that could be called a clean confession, but in fragments, disjointed, scattered pieces of a story soaked in delusion and paranoia. Between the erratic speech and jumbled thoughts, there was something unmistakable, an underlying acceptance of what he'd done. Dusty spoke as if recounting a necessary act, not a crime. To the detectives, it was clear. He was acknowledging responsibility, without fully understanding the weight or horror of his actions, and that made him even more dangerous.
I was brushing and then he throws that gasoline on me because you saw how I was rolled up and down there. Dude, I thought I was just doing it for the other. You know what I mean? Because that was my intention. Everybody knows this. I then managed to hit that Neo UI and come out like that. I don't know how I do it sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, when I'm just experimenting in the house with blades, like before like when I took the butcher knife and threw an incur going like that. I mean, I don't know how I do it, sir. I just know with my beautiful mind that it's a three-way. Yeah. You know, it's the photographic, the audiogenic intake, and then the living intake. Yeah. You know, if y'all don't ever think I'm so amazed that I'm just like, God. Man, I never thought it would be something like that, but my God, what that thing was.
Amid the whirlwind of Dusty's ramblings, paranoia about retinoids, bizarre claims about his photographic memory, and a blur of incoherent thoughts, one line stands out. James was the first time I had to do something like that. It's buried, almost lost in the noise. But to the detective listening, it lands like a thunderclap, an accidental admission veiled in delusion, but unmistakable. Could Dusty be revealing that James was his first victim?
Yes, sir.
And see elsewhere. I know you're not mad at me. That's just, I don't want you to think I'm asking questions.
So many others, like, think my personality is, I can't talk to people.
I can.
Yeah.
But I don't want you to think I'm being an expert.
I am very relieved that we were having this conversation.
Dusty sits back in his chair, voice steady, eyes almost peaceful. "I'm not crazy," he says. "People just don't get how I talk." To the detectives, it's a revealing moment. Dusty isn't scared. He isn't panicked. He's calm, relieved, even. It's not the behavior of someone who just confessed to a brutal killing. It's the behavior of someone who still thinks he's the victim. His detachment from reality is unsettling. There's no remorse, no fear, just a quiet belief that this is all a misunderstanding, that people simply don't understand him. And then he leans forward and asks one final question. His voice is low, almost curious. "So, am I free to go now?" The room falls silent. It's the question that confirms everything. Dusty doesn't grasp the horror of what he's done, not because he's hiding it, but because, in his mind, he still thinks he's innocent.
Will I be able to go home?
I'm gonna figure that out.
Yeah, because or am I going to jail or we're going down to dance?
We're gonna have to figure that kind of out because you know how this thing kind of goes from here.
I guess.
I'm gonna come talk to you about it. Just look okay.
After that bizarre exchange, the detective didn't need to hear another word. Dusty's final question, detached and utterly disconnected from reality, was all the confirmation he needed. Dusty's lack of remorse seemed his warped grip on reality made one thing clear. He had no true understanding of the horror he'd inflicted. According to the pathology report, the murder of James Leighton Decker was nothing short of monstrous. The victim had endured prolonged torture before death. The autopsy revealed severe blunt force trauma, deep cuts, heavy bruising, and multiple fractures to the face, nose, ears, and mouth. His eyes showed signs of extensive internal bleeding. Many of his teeth had been shattered. The damage continued down his neck, bleeding in the muscles, a broken hyoid bone, classic signs of strangulation. His torso told the same brutal story. Several broken ribs and internal hemorrhaging in the chest and abdomen. But the most disturbing detail? Gasoline. Patches of James's skin were sloughing off chemical burns. The smell of gasoline was strong on his arms, thighs, and hands. Worse still, gasoline was found in his lungs and stomach, a horrifying indication that he had inhaled and swallowed it while still alive. This wasn't just a killing. It was a prolonged, calculated act of sadistic violence. Dusty McDonald was processed for forensic evidence and transported to the Leon County Detention Facility. Between the witness accounts, the physical evidence, and his own fragmented confession, detectives had more than enough to move forward. Dusty McDonald was formally charged with one count of first-degree murder, and as of the time of this video's release, his case remains ongoing.